TMFA, hello yet again. We're going to pick right back up where we left off, and we were about to talk a lot about how you can discover what your own preferred accent is. And so we're going to take you through a cool process where we do that with you, so you can learn from that process. So why don't we get started at the beginning again, and Jack, kick us off.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to ask you some questions to help you hone your own accent features. And the first one is the most basic question. Where were you born? So for me, I was born in Coventry, which is in the middle of England. Pamela Vanderway, where were you born?
I was born in the Pacific Northwest in Washington State.
Eliza?
I was born in the New York tri-state area.
Adam?
I was born in Baltimore, Maryland.
And Chris?
I was born about 50 miles north of Denver in Colorado. Great. Eliza, how about you next?
Sure. The adults that raised you, broad terminology here. Yes, anyone. Do they speak in accents identical to you? And if they don't, how would you describe their accents? And write that down for yourself. So for me, I grew up, I was raised by parents, but also their friends who had all adopted general American accents. So they could be actors in New York in the 1980s. So yes, they actually speak just like me. Jack, what about you?
It's the opposite for me, actually. Both my parents have different accents to me. My mother's from Northern Ireland, and my father lived in 6 different countries by the time he was 19. So he has features from all over in his.
Very cool. Pamela, how about you?
My parents are basically from the same location, but their parents and grandparents were from different locations. And I was raised by my parents and partially by my great-grandparents. So my parents are from the Pacific Northwest, but my great-grandparents both emigrated from Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Cool. Adam, how about you?
My parents both have essentially general American accents. However, my mom grew up in Buffalo, New York, so she's got some Buffalo features. And my dad grew up in Brooklyn, and he definitely still has some Brooklyn features.
Chris, how about you?
So my accent growing up was like my parents. Now it is unlike theirs because mine's changed quite a bit. But mom was born here in Colorado, but her mom is from West Texas. So I got a lot of that growing up. And dad is straight out of upstate New York, just north of Ithaca a little ways. And so I heard all that growing up. So I spoke like both of them combined for a long time. And then I went to acting school and it all changed.
I should have said that too, because I don't talk like I talked when growing up anymore, for sure.
Yeah.
We all change a lot over time.
Yeah. Adam, I think you're next. You looked like you wanted to say something. So
Ready to dive in, yes. So question number 2. Okay, can you think about where you have lived so far? Think about all the places that you have lived in your life so far. Can you write them down, and can you try to write them down in chronological order? And can you also note the ages that you were in each of those places? While everybody is kind of putting that information together, I already have mine ready to go. I'm going to say that while I was up through high school, I spent the first part of my life in the suburbs of Baltimore, Maryland. College, and then the next few years after that was right in New York City. And then for the last few years up until the present, I've been in Southern California, mostly Los Angeles. Let's go next to Jack Wallace. You look like you're ready.
Sure. Yeah. For the first 18 years of my life, I lived in the same place in England, in the Midlands. But where I did live, I lived on a divide in accents. I would go to school, pronounce things one way, and come home and pronounce them another way. It wasn't until I went away to college that I had to choose which pronunciation to stick with because I didn't have the external forces there. Since then, I lived in Belfast for 5 years, and then I've been in America since 2013.
Very nice, very nice. Pamela Vanderway.
Well, I spent most of the beginning of my life in Washington State. So up through 18, mostly there with 2 short stints, a semester each in grade school in rural Georgia, North Georgia. Then I'm in LA for the second half of my life. I did live for 1.5 years in Mexico City, and I travel a lot for work. So been a lot of places, but I live in LA. You can hear it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Eliza.
This is interesting. I've spent pretty much most of my life in the New York tri-state area, but I did spend considerable amounts of time in Richmond, Virginia with my grandparents and cousins growing up, which now that I'm putting that down in this quiz, I'm starting to see how that feeds into my preferred accent.
And last but not least, Chris Lang.
Cool. I spent the first 18 years of my life here in sunny Colorado, and then schlepped off for college to Wyoming, and then London, and then Boston, and then Russia, and then back to Wyoming after that. So lots of different stuff while I was like from 18 to 27 or 8. And then I was in LA after that. And then I'm all over the place between LA and Colorado and elsewhere for work.
Get through all of us? I think we did, right? So that
I
means
think that's all, right?
yeah. So I think that means I get to ask this question. I think it's me. So here's an interesting question, and you might have to think more about this later, and the answers might pop up later because it's something you might not be cognizant of right off the bat. But when you were a teenager, did you take on specifically, like on purpose, any sounds from Friends, TV, something that you made just your own? We ask this because there are two major times in our lives when our accents are formed in big chunks. One is when our adults first teach us how to talk like them. And then secondly, typically when we hit puberty, when we're like, I'm me, I talk like me, and we storm into our room, right? So did you do anything like that? Did you have anything like that? I did. I got really enamored of an actress who had a slight lisp. So sibilance here, and I just love it. I still love it. I love that whistly sound, and I will do it. I will do it as much as possible. Now I can't stop. Oh, let me ask Jack. Jack, how about you?
Great. Sure. I don't remember intentionally adopting features from anything, but in the 90s and early 2000s, the TV shows in England were all either American or Australian, depending on what you saw. So I was surrounded by a lot of other sounds, but there were none that I intentionally adopted and latched onto to claim as my own.
How about you, Eliza?
Well, somewhere around my teenage years, I decided that a lower, raspier voice was going to make me cooler. And that probably had a lot to do with Lucy Lawless on Xena Warrior Princess, Jane Seymour on Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, and Kate Mulgrew on Star Trek Voyager. And I think you can hear it to this day.
I love that. Adam, what about you?
Yeah, I spent a lot of summers in Buffalo, New York, when I was very, very young. And when I would come back to the Baltimore area at the end of the summer, I noticed that I had brought some of those features down with me, and I was very aware of it, that I sounded a little bit different from everybody else around me at the time. So a little bit of Buffalo, New York.
Cool. And Chris?
Yes, absolutely. I did this. I was heavily influenced by one of my very favorite television shows in the 90s, The Animaniacs. And I took on the character voices, and in particular, one of the sort of ways of hesitating and trying to like put a button on a conversation that Yakko Warner did. I also went so far as to create a radio show, a Pinky and the Brain radio show with a friend of mine at one point. So definitely heavily, it was a good time. I must have been a lot of fun to be around.
That's awesome. I think Chris, I think you're up next.
I am indeed. So, what are your inside jokes? Do you have any inside jokes, for instance, with your family or your group of friends? You know, because even our friends can be like family to us, especially as we age. What are those inside jokes or turns of phrases and things like that? And now is actually a really good time to make a important distinction. And you've heard it a couple of times probably already, this thing, accent and dialect. what's the difference there and where does that break down? Linguists of all stripes can have good, well-intentioned arguments about the actual definition of this in a lot of different ways. But I think the one that we like and that we'll primarily agree on is accent is a unique way of speaking, and dialect is that plus word choice. So this is part of dialect. What are your inside jokes? What are your, turns of phrase, things like that? I have a great one in my family that's one of my very favorites of all time. Comes from a ski trip when I was a little kid. There was a family from somewhere else standing in the line in front of us, and the daughter was really excited to show her mom and dad what she could do down the slopes, and she was going to go for it, and her dad puts out his hand and goes, "Sissy babe, remember who you are." And we were standing behind, we all heard that, and we thought it was really kind of cool and a little bit funny. And so anytime in my family somebody needs to like check themselves before they wreck themselves, they get a "Sissy babe, remember who you are." How about you, Adam?
Yeah. So in just about every nook and cranny of my family, I can remember Yiddish being very heavily spoken and used, especially in my own house with my parents. And the phrase that I just go to that was always said was, possibly you've heard this, "Oi Gewalt."
Absolutely. And that means?
Oi, oi, oi. Ah.
The body language alone says it, right?
For those who don't live in areas where there's lots of people who use Yiddish phrases, since this is a worldwide thing. Yeah, I have a lot of those too.
How about you, Pamela? What about your inside jokes and phrases?
Okay, I got to share two. So we did one, we talked backwards. So my grandmother liked to take words and spell them out backwards and then reinvent how you pronounce them. So elegant was tenagly, or she'd take words and put them together. So like to die for, which just means something is dope. To die for is totifer. Oh, that's totifer. And then so I was Alamap. My sister was an Injay, and the name's backwards. And there's that. And then what's going down in Clowntown? My sister had a baby. She had a really small apartment. We all came to visit her. We were in like clowns, like in a clown car. And so we started calling each other clowns. The clowns. Our whole family is the clowns. Not scary clowns, nice clowns. So we started asking, I think it was me. I think I invented it. What's going down in Clowntown? And now everybody in my family says, what's going down in Clowntown?
I think I've heard you say that.
Oh, yes.
Eliza, any inside jokes, turns of phrase?
Yeah, well, I mentioned before that my dad's family is from Virginia. And so it's wormed its way into our kind of vernacular that there's a phrase, "I do believe I'll have some pie," which means I would like to give myself this small luxury. It can be applied to really any small luxury or kindness that you allow yourself, but it must be said twice as slow as you were previously speaking.
I think I may appropriate that for myself, Eliza.
Oh,
That sounds awesome. Jack, how about you? Any inside jokes, turns of phrases?
Yeah, one at my expense. As I said, my mother and her side of the family is all from Northern Ireland. And so we rent the same holiday house every year when we go. And they have one of those old-fashioned cookers that are called Agas, A-G-A. But I'd only ever heard people say it. So I decided to play I Spy in the kitchen. And I said something beginning with "why," because I've always heard them say, "turn the yaga on." And so the elision from the to the yaga. So I thought it was yaga. So yeah, people bring that up. I Spy with my delights at the beginning with "why" all the time.
That's fantastic. Let's see here. Who's next? Eliza, I think you're next.
I think I've got the perfect question to put a cap on our quiz. So, what do others say about your voice or your accents? And the reason that we have this question in the quiz is that what others say, how they respond to your voice, that's the feedback that you're using to sculpt and cultivate your preferred accent. We make many, many choices about how to sound. And we do that based on the feedback we get. So people tell me that my voice is very soothing, and that's nice. And it's helpful, I think, in my line of work to be soothing. So I lean into it. Jack, what do people say about your voice?
I guess it depends on where I'm located. So having lived in America for the past 6 years, people are just kind of interested in, are you British? Is the main question. Anytime I speak to strangers in the street, people at the bank, anyone, the first thing they say is, are you British? Whereas in England, the way that my voice it resonates, people think that I have a cold all the time because there's some kind of nasal stuff happening there. So yeah, two very different situations depending on where I am.
I like it. I like it. How about you, Pamela?
You know, I'm glad that Jack brought up two situations because I think I have two ways of being and communicating. So people either say, wow, you talk really fast, which is quite true. Or they say kind of what they're saying about you, which is, you're so soothing, I could hear it all day. I think it depends on how you catch me. If you catch me in this mood or in this one. It just depends. So those are the two things I get.
Great. Adam, what do people say about your voice?
Voice-wise, I've gotten booming before a number of times. And then accent-wise, and I'm very aware of it living in Southern California now, somewhat frequently people just say East Coast, somewhere in the East Coast. Not sure where, nondescript, but East Coast.
Chris, what do people say about your voice?
People usually tell me, and I'll resonate with Adam on this one, booming, big voice, I'm loud. I've definitely heard loud a lot. My mother shushed me a lot as a child and still does to this day. And I also get kind of well-spoken, I think because I have a vocabulary that comes from England, in large part, my time there. A lot of ears in America perceive that as more, more formal, perhaps. Yeah.
Interesting. Cool.
Okay. Well, guys, that's the end of the quiz. There you have it. So we've done a little bit of... Pardon me while I die in front of you on screen. I'm okay, I promise. So that's the quiz. And you've done a little bit of looking into it and hopefully getting curious about what features make up your own preferred accent and how you might even describe that. So let's do this. Let's actually go through our own preferred accents yet again. So here's ours again. Pamela?
Pacific Northwest, Washington State, with a healthy dose of California and a little bit of Georgia, I would say.
All right. Adam?
Mid-Atlantic East Coast with Southern California.
Awesome. Eliza?
I would say general American pronunciation with New York State prosody and a couple of nasalized Virginian vowels.
Awesome. Jack?
On the spectrum of received pronunciation with some vowels from the Midlands and some stress patterns and consonant usage from America.
Cool. And I myself, mostly general American with 2 healthy scoops of West Texas and upstate New York and a spritzel, little sprinkling of British vocabulary. All right. That's it for us. In terms of that, how are you guys out there coming along with your descriptions? Put them in the comments. We want to know what you came up with. How are you describing your preferred accent? What got you the most curious in all of the questions we asked you? Was there any one of them that resonated more with you than the others? That'd be cool to know. Think about why that is. The whole goal here is to deepen your perception of your own preferred accent. So again, you know where we're starting from in accent work to get to any target accent that you want to go towards. Let's see here. We would love to open it up to some questions if Facebook Live had allowed to that. But we actually, I've got my colleagues here who encounter all sorts of actors throughout their day. Let me ask you guys, are there any questions that you guys bump into all the time from actors that you think it would be important for these guys on TMFA to know?
Yeah.
Pamela, any questions? Eliza, Adam, Jack?
I'll jump in. Something that I get asked a lot is something I think that, Chris, you've already mentioned, but it bears repeating, which is the difference between a dialect and an accent, because the words get interchanged a lot, I think, in the industry, and I think people get nervous that they'll use the incorrect one. So in terms of coaching, and I think amongst the people who are on this call, a dialect is 100% going to be the sounds plus the word choices. And the word accent refers to only the sounds. But I think the real answer to that is don't be afraid to use the wrong one. Just keep talking about the thing and it'll all become clear.
Cool. Anybody else have any perspectives on that?
Oh.
I think Eliza covered it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she did.
Yeah, I think so too.
Did you have a question coming up there, Adam?
I was thinking about another question. I'm so sorry that I stepped on the toes there. Another really, really common question. What accents should I learn, or what's most popular out there? I always like to say that a great way to answer that question, what's going on in the world right now? What do you notice is happening out there? What major events are taking place? Because guaranteed there are going to be stories that are going to be needed to be told about these events and these situations. So where are those things happening from in the world, and start to just kind of put your feelers out there in terms of that, because you're going to possibly need to have some accents coming from that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to add to that, which is that, when a lot of times training programs will say you need this one and this one and this one. And it's just based on really what's happening out there. It really is. It's what's happening out there, and what are people going to buy from you? Like, look at the rest of your acting career. What are people casting you as anyway? And then kind of what is the current trend of which people's accents are they putting in that right now? There was a time in the 80s when every waitress was from the South, the American South. It was like, well, American Southern waitresses are really, really popular, like it just changes over time. So like California, and I'm all, anyway. So really pay attention to those things. Look at what's happening out there and what's happening for you in your career, and put those two things together, and you'll figure out what to do next.
Cool.
Yeah, another question that people often ask as well that really ties into what we've done today is, what's the most difficult accent to learn? And I would say, having watched this video, you're now clued in a little bit more as to what you may do. And I would say the things that are hardest are things that sounds you don't make every day, that you've never practiced before, new sounds that you have to learn before you can slot them into place. People generally find hardest. So it's going to depend on the person and where you're coming from.
Yeah. And dovetailing off of that, Jack, thanks for setting that so I can spike the ball next. But it's, I get asked a lot, how long does it take to learn an accent? Like, what's the most difficult thing we could do accent-wise, and how long might that thing take? And, like you said, there's a lot of variables that sort of go into that question. Every actor is different. Every actor has a different artistic journey and things that they bring to the table already, linguistically, physically, sound-wise, mentally, all of that. So there is a wide variation in terms of that, in terms of what it's going to take. But the best answer outside of "it depends" that we can give you is plan on it taking a while. All right, because you have to learn skills and master them, and then also master the features of the accent and integrate it. And that can, it takes, Pamela, you're fond of saying it's like dance or martial arts, right?
Arts, yeah. So like, if you have to learn a martial arts sequence for a film, if you are already a martial artist in jiu-jitsu and the scene is in karate, it's going to take you a lot less time than if you're a librarian who's never done any karate at all. Like this, it's going to take me longer than it is going to take the jiu-jitsu person. It's just, yeah. So it's all very individual, and there's a little bit of mystery to it. So, but Chris is right. Be prepared.
I think, just to add on to the end of that, not scare you, but rather to soothe you, because that's sort of a thing that I do. I want to just say that, like any physical skill, you should be prepared to not be good at everything right away. Anything worth learning is worth being bad at for a minute. You know what I mean? So have some faith in yourself, allow yourself that allowance. I think performers, actors tend to be kind of very good at listening.
Yeah.
So you tend to be hardest on listening to yourself.
True
Give yourself
that.
that allowance.
True that. We all arrive on the planet not very good at many things. You know, we have to learn everything, basically. So this is just another one of those things. Can I talk about what makes an accent performance good?
Totally.
Yeah. So people ask that a lot. You know, how do you know if the accent performance is good? Well, when you're watching as an audience member, it's almost an innate response. It's like watching somebody who has lipstick on their teeth. When the accent's bad, you're like, what? Something's really weird. And you can't get your mind off of it because it shouldn't be there, right? So as an audience member, it's easy. As an actor, what you're looking for is that you've selected an accent that is appropriate for whatever that piece of entertainment is, for that character, for that genre, for that everything about that particular project. Accent selection is appropriate. And then, is the performance consistent? Are you staying in accent? Because those inconsistencies are what catches people the worst. The inconsistencies will catch all the people. That's not my neighborhood, and you're in my neighborhood accent, that'll catch many people, but a couple of people won't hear it because they just don't know well enough what that accent should sound like, so they just buy it. Not that you should do that. You should not. You should go for what's the real deal, because then everybody loves your show. And then finally, are you able to communicate through that accent like a real person? Not just in those lines in that way, but can you in your own self communicate authentically in that accent? Because if you can, then your character can. If you can't, your character cannot. And that's what you're looking for, you know, a good accent performance.
Sweet. I think that's really important, right? Yeah. Ta-da. Pamela, one of your specialities is the word I was looking for. One of your specialities is in helping actors find the right coach for them, because I even get asked by a lot of actors, how the heck do I find the coach for me? What should I be looking for? When should I look? When do I need to work with a private coach even?
Okay. Which one of those should I answer?
How about when should I work with a private coach?
Okay. You should work with a private coach when in two situations. One, when you have a short deadline and your skills do not match up to what the character needs, you must call a professional dialect coach at that point, because there's no way you're going to be able to take yourself from 0 to, oh my goodness, in this unreasonable request for an audition tomorrow morning without somebody there to spot you. But in the long term, it's kind of the same thing. It's when your skills run out. So go to a dialect coach after you've done, and the part that you can do by yourself, it doesn't take that long, but after you've done what you know how to do. So what you really have been taught to do. So if you've never worked with a coach at all ever, you kind of have to start there because you don't really know how to start on an accent. But if you have a format that you can use to learn an accent, stuff you can do on your own. You can do the script analysis on your own, come up with concepts of how do I want this character to sound, supply your dialect coach with accent models that you've drawn on from the internet, if you know what those are and how to select good ones. You bring that along with your best shot at the accent to your dialect coach. That gets you the most bang for your buck. That gets you the most return for your effort, is when you do it that way. If you just show up and say, I have a script here somewhere and a character, and can you make me like I'm from Arkansas tomorrow? Your coach is going to be like interviewing you to find out how they can help you properly. And you're going to be paying for that interview. So bring what you can to the table, but don't stray so far off. Really know what your limits are on teaching yourself. I know like this much martial arts. I know you probably should breathe and center. So after that, I would need to go to a martial arts teacher. But if you took karate in 4th grade and you know some kata or something and it's in your body, that's great. You get that far, you bring your kata to the teacher. They help you from that point on. But so know yourself, know your limits, and being able to teach yourself. Don't fool yourself, but definitely stand up for yourself and do some work. I see Eliza's looks like she wants to talk. Is that right? Oh no.
I couldn't agree more, Pamela. I couldn't agree more. I think, I think when you're reaching out to your coach, think of it as a partnership, right? The two of you are going to work together, rather than, you know, the coach bringing things to you. You two of you are going to meet each other in the middle.
Yeah, that's a big misconception people have, is that, you know, the coach is going to make you sound like something. We can't.
Yeah, you want to sound like you, but
Well, we can't control your brain and your mouth and make you move. You're not an animatron. You're a
Your
human.
coach can't do the accent for you.
Mm-mm. It's us teaching you how to get that skill done yourself. How to you know, take that on yourself, for sure. And then go ahead.
Sorry, that's more fun. I think it's more engaging for the actor as well as the coach, but it's gonna not only be more, you know, rewarding, but it is more fun that way.
It is. It really is. You also asked, how do you find a dialect coach? Is that what you're asking, Chris?
Yeah. I mean, imagine somebody said to you, you have an acting teacher who says, there's an accent thing here that we should do. You should find a dialect coach. Go.
Okay. I'm going to start. Eliza was saying she's comforting. I'm the bad cop out here. So Eliza, we're good cop and bad cop. So I'm the put the fear of God in you person. I'm just going to tell you flat out that the internet is so pretty and it's full of so many pretty websites. And it's really hard to tell who has the skills that you need by looking at a website. By looking at what any one of us has written about ourselves, even on our own websites. You cannot know that that is the truth. And it's not that people are out there putting up websites trying to lie to you, but there are a lot of helpful hobbyists who put up shingles as dialect coaches because they don't actually know what a real dialect coach does. They go to college. I mean, all of us went to college here. We were probably all very good in speech class in college if we had that. It drove us toward this career. But at some point we were like, but now how do I really do that? And then we collected the training ourselves on the outside to actually be able to become a dialect coach. But there are coaches out there who have hung up a shingle and their only training is the same training that any actor in any college got. And it's not sufficient for being a dialect coach. These people have very, very good intentions, but you're going to be paying money to not get very much return. So just be aware of that as you're going in. I mean, I created Dialect Coaches Worldwide because I was tired of having to I shouldn't say tired, I should say just heartbroken, really. Heartbroken having to hear stories from actors who had been through dialect coaching for like a year, 2 years, and they had no progress at all. And then we talked further and they weren't with a real dialect coach. They were with a helpful hobbyist. And so I said, we need to have some kind of vetting for this. And so I set it up. I set up a system. I set up a system of vetting dialect coaches to take that burden off of actors. That you know that any coach that has a Dialect Coaches Worldwide symbol badge on their site has gone through an extensive interview process. They have been run through their paces, and they've been observed coaching. I do get feedback from their clients as well. So that's how Dialect Coaches Worldwide even came into existence, was because we needed to do this because it wasn't fair to actors to have to just keep looking. If you are interviewing a bunch of dialect coaches, don't start with how much does it cost, because that's not what you're paying for. You're not paying for how much it costs. If you want to just say, I want to just spend X amount of money, just take that money and hand it to anybody you see on the street and you will have spent that money. What you want to do is find out, do they have the skills that you need them to have? So it's up to you to know what those skills are. So look at what your project is, look at what the accent is, ask if they've done that project before. You may ask them to show you testimonials, to put you in contact with other people they've worked with. Also, don't take for, I know I'm going on a long time, but this is a hard thing. Don't take someone's resume as meaning that they know what they're doing. A lot of people have stumbled onto sets, and I'm seeing a ton of them right now because we're recording this during the pandemic lockdown thing. And so the number of people writing in to ask to be vetted as dialect coaches has risen exponentially because people are looking for work. And so we have lots of people looking to become dialect coaches. So, oh, I lost track of thought. What was I saying? I'm so sorry.
Don't trust the resumes.
Oh yeah. So I'm looking at the resumes, and somebody will say, "Oh, I worked on this TV show and that TV show," and I'm like, "Great, send me a resume." And they've only done those two things. And when I talk to them further, they knew somebody who knew somebody, and the production didn't plan very well, so they were like, "Oh my gosh, we didn't get a dialect coach. Does anybody know somebody today?" And they ended up on set. So they've been on 2 shows because that happened. Sometimes you can wander onto a show and suddenly you're like, "Wow, I'm accidentally coaching this mega actor. How did that happen?" And then that goes on the resume. It doesn't mean you knew what you were doing when you arrived there. So those big names on resumes do not mean what you think they mean. It's just one small piece of the puzzle you're looking for. What is the person's training? What are their actual skills? Do you like them? Do they seem to know the body parts that you're going to be using to speak? Do they make you feel good while they're talking about that? Or do they make you feel bad by squishing you down with a bunch of vocabulary? Do they seem to understand the art of acting? And are they respectful of your craft and the way you approach your craft? Because we're all up right next to your acting business. If we're just telling you, these are the facts, here's how you do it, we're going to wreck your performance. We have to understand how you are as an actor. And we have to know our stuff if we're going to be a really effective coach. So that's who you're really looking for. Good luck. Just call me.
Come to dialectcoaches.com. Any other questions that we want to bring out, or
that's good, I think.
Yeah. As always, TMFA, as you're watching this, if you have any questions, please stick them in the comments. We do circle back to this. I'm going to be circling back a couple times a day for the next week just to see who's described their preferred accent and talk to you about that, and also any questions that you might have so we can chat about that. You should never ever feel weird about reaching out to us like this. We are here to help. So don't feel weird about that at all. We want to chat with you in the comments. So let's do this. How about a quick review, guys? Should we just do a quick review and then tie it in a bow?
Sounds good.
All right. Pamela, you take it away.
Okay, so one of the big takeaways from today is what's an accent and what's a dialect. So an accent, a very basic definition, is a characteristic way of speaking. And a dialect is that plus some word choices. In the film and television industry, those words are often used interchangeably. So linguists have one way of looking at it, but don't let that bother you in the industry. Just, out of context, figure out, do they mean accent or do they mean dialect? And just keep going. That's what I would say.
Cool.
Absolutely. And accents are a vital part of our social structure. As human beings, we teach them to each other. We use them as social cues and belongings to different social groups. They're not just created out of thin air.
Yeah.
Every single one of us has an accent. Every single one of us on the planet, we all have an accent. And those accents have the potential to change throughout our lives as we go from one group into another.
And when you set out to master a new accent consciously, being aware of your own preferred accent is going to help you chart your course most effectively to your target accent.
Great. Well, we encourage you to keep staying curious about this stuff. You might not be able to know what your preferred accent is instantly. Stay curious about it. keep digging through these questions. Again, put your preferred accent discoveries in the comments along with your questions. I'll just finish up by saying a huge thank you to Wendy here at TMFA for inviting us on to talk to you guys. We'll be back for sure from time to time to chat more about accents. If there's anything particular that you want to know about, pop that in the comments too, because we want to speak to the things that you go, oh my gosh, what do I do in this thing with this place at this time? We're here to help. So just a quick reminder as well, feel free to come on over to Dialect Coaches Worldwide for Actors. That's the Facebook group that we all inhabit. For the next week, we'll be going live there Tuesday through Saturday. So check us out there. We'll be talking about accent integration this week, and who knows what the future holds from there. If you want to get a hold of any one of us, the best way to do that is probably to go to dialectcoaches.com and use the contact page there to try to talk to any one of us. And we'll be sure to get back to you as soon as possible in that case. So that's all I have, unless anyone has anything else to say to TMFA today. It's good to be here, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, TMFA.
Yeah, thanks, TMFA.
Thank
All
you.
right. That's it for us today, you guys. Have a great week. We'll see you out there on Facebook.